Over the past 2 seasons, Anthony Edwards has made statements in the playoffs, making mild upsets and going to back-to-back Western Conference Finals. And Anthony Edwards is one of the weird players in the NBA to where the path to improvement is so obvious for him that we're just waiting to crown him as the best player in the NBA. But are we? Is Anthony Edwards really good enough to be crowned as the best player in basketball? Is he really good enough with all of his flaws that he has right now to be crowned the best player in the league, to be the #1 option for a Minnesota Timberwolves team that has not seen an NBA Finals in plenty of years? Has he had way too much playoff success way too early in his career to the point where if he doesn't succeed or get to a championship and win an NBA Finals soon, that people are going to start to underrate him? Well, in today's episode of At the Buzzer Sports, we're going to be talking about the improvements that Anthony Edwards needs to make to maybe become the best player in basketball. So I think I'm pretty confident in saying that Anthony Edwards might just be the most marketable young star in basketball today. And I mean with on and off the court antics. I mean, Anthony Edwards is somebody that doesn't really have a filter when he's being interviewed, doesn't have a filter on the court, always wants to go at rival superstars, whether it's Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Nikola Jokic, SGA, was especially guys within his conference. And with some of the improvements that Anthony Edwards has been making over the past few seasons, it's kind of like we're expecting that jump to where he really does need some improvements at. And I don't think a lot of people are just necessarily looking at his game and seeing if he can actually make those improvements. They're just going based off of what the improvements he's made in the past. And I'm not one of the guys that thinks Anthony Edwards can't make these improvements. I mean, over the past 2 seasons in the postseason, he's averaged 26 points per game, 7 rebounds, 6 assists. He's become one of the best three-point shooters in the league, shooting 40% from three on 10 attempts a night. That's a feat that not a lot of players have been able to do. We're talking about guys like Steph Curry, Damian Lillard, Klay Thompson, and Anthony Edwards was about 0.5% away from averaging that for the entire season. And I think what puts Anthony Edwards in this conversation is the postseason play. Like I said, over the past 2 seasons, Anthony Edwards has averaged 26 points per game in back-to-back postseasons to where he can go into the defending champions arena in a Game 7, play poorly, but they still win the series. And a lot based off of some of his contributions throughout earlier in the series. Or he can go up against Los Angeles with Luka Doncic just being traded there and LeBron James, the current face of the league, and beat them in 5 games and have the swagger and confidence to win those series. So I would say a lot of the face of the league talk has come from his play in the postseason. And I definitely understand that. Anthony Edwards is one of the better players the league has seen. He's from 10 to 13 in my opinion. But one of the craziest jumps that I noticed this season and the world has noticed was the shooter that shot 36% from 3 on 7 attempts last year to 40% from 3 on 10 attempts. That doesn't seem like much of improvement. It's a plus 4% on maybe an extra 3 three-pointers a game. That is huge. Anthony Edwards from last season to this season became one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA. And with a guy like Anthony Edwards that has that physical structure, that has that speed, that strength, that athleticism, you don't necessarily become one of the best three-point shooters in the league overnight. This is one of the better progressions in someone's game that we have seen. Like, not a lot of players. Just imagine if D Wade in 2008 came into 2009 shooting 40% from 3 on 10 attempts. Like, that's ridiculous. And obviously that opens up so much for his game because now instead of teams being like, we want you to shoot those shots multiple times a game, now we have to step up on you. Now we have to try and take away the three-pointer, which creates so much more space in the lane for you to get downhill. And it wasn't necessarily just off pull-up threes. Anthony Edwards was playing in pick and roll. He was playing in isolation. He was coming off screens and shooting threes off motion, off spot ups, to where he has this versatile three-point shot that he can go to, and now he's one of the best players in the league while still being one of the best downhill threats in basketball, being one of the best transition players in basketball, being one of the best athletes in basketball, and now being able to shoot 40% from 3 on 10 attempts a night. I just don't know what to do with that. So it feels like we got most of the good parts about Anthony Edwards' offensive game. The ability to get downhill at will, now the ability to add a 40% three-point shot to his game, the ball handle, the finishing around the rim. We have all that. There are still very slight imperfections to his game that if he cleans these up going into next season, I do think he can be a top 5 to 7 player in basketball, because with Joel Embiid on the decline and Jason Tatum going to be missing this season, I do think there's a wide open window for some of these young players to be entering those top 5 talk. I think Victor Wembanyama and Anthony Edwards are those two guys that you can really push in to try and fit into that category. And just like before, in the 2024 Western Conference Finals against the Dallas Mavericks, we saw some of the imperfections from Anthony Edwards' game, and that was really just the decision-making, the passing, the playmaking. Because now, in a situation with Dallas where they played a very gap-heavy defense, or they funneled a lot and just recovered by playing passing lanes, they funneled a lot to the bigs, and they recovered by playing passing lanes and playing in space, Anthony Edwards could not really function against that. He could not make the proper decisions consistently. He was having bad passes, bad reads, taking bad shots, and we kind of saw this coming into the season. There were some games, in my opinion, where he would shoot the team out of the game, and especially during like later in the fourth quarter in clutch time, I do believe there was times where Anthony Edwards' decision making could have cost the Timberwolves the game. But I'm not necessarily going to blame Anthony Edwards as much, because there is some very limited spacing in that Minnesota Timberwolves team, especially last season with Rudy Gobert and Jaden McDaniels, and even some parts of this season. But there were also some signs that shown that Anthony Edwards has gotten better as a passer, and the OKC series and the Lakers series especially game 4 of the first round against the Los Angeles Lakers, to where the Los Angeles Lakers had a scheme that I thought worked perfectly against Anthony Edwards, because Anthony Edwards has not shown to me that he can make the consistent reads to beat that level of defense. Los Angeles did not have the necessary rim protection to stop Anthony Edwards, but they also had a different type of defense to where they didn't have the point of attack defense either to stop an Anthony Edwards. So we knew Anthony Edwards was going to get wherever he wanted, but it was about helping off the shooters and helping off the corners to where Anthony Edwards would have to make that read or just take a shot over 2 people. And I was banking on Anthony Edwards taking the shot over 2 people. Well, just like me and 85% of the analysts on YouTube, because I remember those videos, I know a lot of y'all was picking the Lakers in 5. Anthony Edwards carved the Lakers defense up. It looked like the improvements that we've been wanting from him as a passer and playmaker were finally reaching its limits, because Mike Conley is on his way out of the NBA. I don't think Rob Dillingham is ready to be a starting point guard for a team that's looking to win a championship. Anthony Edwards is probably going to have to be the guy that makes majority of the decisions based on how Mike Conley and Rob Dillingham look coming into the season. And there was multiple scenarios where Anthony Edwards was making the right read. He was making the skip passes. He was making the passes one pass away. He was making all the right reads based off of him collapsing the defense, and that's something you would love to see from him. But every time in the postseason, it feels like we find something in Ant's game to where it's like, just add that one thing and I promise you he's right there. He adds that one thing and I promise you it's right there. This year, we found it, and it's the in-between game. Anthony Edwards is one tweak away from being one of the best 3-level scorers in basketball. Yes, one of the best 3-level scorers in basketball. This season, Anthony Edwards shot 38% from the mid-range and 40% in the paint non-restricted area, 45% on floaters as well, but he only took about 90 of them, so that's only about 1 a game. I do think Anthony Edwards really needs to build that in-between game, because with the level of defenses in the Western Conference, which we're actually going to get into pretty soon, you're going to have to be able to keep the defense honest, because there are multiple teams that have a combination of rim protection and point of attack defense that can make Anthony Edwards struggle, especially teams like OKC, teams like Dallas, teams like Houston, I think have the switchability, the versatility, the speed, and the size to make Anthony Edwards' life much harder. Because even then, in the Western Conference Finals this year, Anthony Edwards averaged 23 points per game, 8 rebounds, and 5 assists a night. The points went down and the assists went down from the previous 2 series. And that's because a lot of it just was Anthony Edwards settling on mid-range shots or them forcing the ball out of Anthony Edwards' hands. And it was a struggle. I don't think he has to become Kevin Durant in the mid-range. I'm not saying that. All you have to do is keep the defense honest. And I truly do think it's just a touch thing. I don't think it's him struggling to get to his spots. I don't think it's him struggling to get to the areas where he may feel comfortable. I truly do think it's a touch thing because he has the handle and the athleticism and the strength to be able to get to the mid-range consistently. He just does not have the touch to convert on those mid-range looks consistently. Whether it's post fades, pull-up mid-range shots, or even a floater. If you can just have a 8 to 11 foot floater you can get to consistently, that will keep the defense honest. To where in the postseason, it looked like a lot of teams were okay with Anthony Edwards taking mid-range shots. We stopped him from getting to the rim, and we stopped him from that 40% three ball that he loves to shoot this season. We did our job. We did our job on that. That's one Achilles heel to Anthony Edwards' game that is going to be exploited in his playoffs. We saw how teams guarded him earlier in the postseason this year, where they're like, we're going to dare Anthony Edwards to make the right read. We're going to dare Anthony Edwards to make the right read. And he ended up making the right read. So I bet your bottom dollar coming into this season, teams are going to be like, we're going to make Anthony Edwards kill us from mid-range. Kill us from mid-range, Ant. You in that 38% mid-range shot. Kill us with it. Beat us. And I think that's probably just the most concerning thing about Anthony Edwards' game is just how is he going to look around teams that I think he can struggle against? And those are the three teams I think Anthony Edwards would really struggle against. And those teams are the Thunder, the Rockets, and the Dallas Mavericks. Multiple teams with size, a rebounding advantage, and elite switchability. There are multiple guys on the Oklahoma City Thunder that I think could get some possessions guarding Anthony Edwards. Those guys being Alex Caruso, Cason Wallace, Lou Dort, and Jalen Williams. Guys on the Mavericks, Cooper Flagg, PJ Washington, Najee Marshall, and Max Christie. And then guys on Houston, Amen Thompson, Jabari Smith, Tari Eason. Those are multiple guys that I think could have some possessions on Anthony Edwards. And then you get the backline rim protection. For OKC, it's guys like J-Dub, Chet, and Isaiah Hartenstein. For Dallas, it's guys like Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively, Cooper Flagg, and Anthony Davis. For the Houston Rockets, it's guys like Amen Thompson and Alperen Sengun. That might not be the best, and Kevin Durant, because Kevin Durant do be having some help side rim protection. But teams I do think he could really thrive against are going to be teams that play primarily drop coverage. And those teams would be the Nuggets, the Clippers, or the Lakers. Now, I know the Nuggets aren't necessarily a huge drop team because I don't think Jokic plays drop. I think he hedges or he just blitzes. But again, I think Ant would have a pretty good time against the Denver Nuggets. I think he would play pretty well against the Nuggets. But especially the Lakers and the Lakers and the Clippers, I think Zubats and DeAndre Ayton are pretty much drop bigs. And with Anthony Edwards being one of the best shooters in the league, you're either going to get a switch or you're going to have him shooting over drop coverage all night. I think Anthony Edwards would thrive against those teams. So, ladies and gentlemen, with these improvements, do you guys think Anthony Edwards can become a top 5 player in basketball? If so, make sure you guys let me know in the comments. And I just dropped a new YouTube channel called Diesel Television, where we're going to be reacting to all things outside of basketball, whether it's true crime, whether it's pop the balloon challenges, whatever it is. The link will be in the description below. And with all that being said, make sure you guys follow me on Playback, where we are going to be streaming a lot of games this season at The Buzzer Sports. Make sure you guys follow me on TikTok at The Buzzer ENT. Make sure you guys follow me on Twitter at ATB Sports 1. And make sure you guys follow me on Instagram at The Buzzer Sports _. And with all that being said, I will see you guys next time. Peace.